Hello, everybody, and welcome to Behind the Camera. Here we are with episode 97 of Behind the Camera, and we're getting closer and closer to episode 100, which is going to be here before you guys know it, and I cannot wait for you to see what we have in store for episode 100. But before we get into today's show, if you'd like to follow Behind the Camera across social media, you can find my link tree in the description, which will take you to Instagram, TikTok, X, YouTube, and also has the link for where you can buy my book, Behind the Camera, The Journey So Far. This is available in both paperback and ebook, and is free to read if you have Kindle Unlimited. And if you want to see more of the behind-the-scenes side of the podcast, you can also support the show on Patreon. For £3 a month, you'll get access to extra content, including a Patreon-exclusive series, your name added to the wall of patrons at the end of every episode of Behind the Camera, and much more. But now, getting into today's conversation. Today, I'm joined by photographer and writer Kirk Voclain. Kirk has over 45 years of photography experience, dedicating his career to capturing powerful, emotionally charged moments with a reputation for capturing the story behind his shots. Kirk is also the founder of proforum.com, that is pro4um.com, a community connecting photographers to help them learn and grow their craft. Outside of photography, Kirk has also ventured into the world of writing fiction with his debut novel, Double Exposure. We talk Kirk's career, venture into writing, and how the two things connected so fluidly. But now, here's the interview. Kirk, welcome to Behind the Camera podcast. Absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. How are we doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I enjoy talking about all things.
Oh, love to hear that. Love to hear that. So you are definitely in the right place here. So photographer and writer, very, very good mix of things. I absolutely love that. Very excited to talk about it. So let's start with the photography, because obviously you have over 45 years experience in that. It sounds as though you've always had a camera in your hands. So yeah, let's go from the very beginning, how you got into photography and how you worked your way up with that.
Absolutely. I mean, I was literally in the first grade. So what is that? 6 years old, I think. And my mom, makes you breakfast in the morning, right? And it was Kellogg's cornflakes. She makes me, and I'm reading the back of the Kellogg's cornflakes box, and it said, "Save up your box tops and get a camera." So I was like, I want to do that. So I told her, keep buying this, So, months later, I saved up all my little box tops, and I got a Kodak Instamatic 126 film drop-in cartridge. I think I still had it here. Oh, yeah.
Oh, very nice.
Very nice. There it is. Okay. So I got my little 126, I'm taking pictures of this and that and everything. Well, film, do you remember film? You're probably too young to remember film.
No,
am I right?
I remember film. Yeah, where, in fact, just a very small line to it, where I used to live, where I grew up, there is actually one remaining store where you'd go and get your film developed. And
awesome.
I was surprised that after I moved away from there over 20 years ago, still there, but even mid 2000s, it was still going strong. But yeah, no, I remember.
That's awesome. Well, my daughter is 30, and I was talking about film, and she's like, "Film? What's film?" And so I had to explain to her, you drop $2,500 roughly on a box of film, and that was before you took the first picture as a photographer. You had to, buy film and hope that you could get customers. And those were the days. But yeah, so I'm taking all these pictures, and film is so expensive to buy and develop. And, so I started thinking to myself, there's got to be a better way, And I also tell you, it's kind of funny because let me show you the camera. Is this audio only or audio and video?
Audio and video. You were all good.
Okay, awesome. Well, then great. Then you can relate right here. See, this is the hole that you look through. But this is the hole that takes the picture. Yep. Okay. Now, as a little 6-year-old dude, that bugged me. I don't know why it bugged me. I didn't know about things like parallax correction and all those things that, Kodak and the big boys had worked out for those things. It just bugged me. I was like, how come I got to look through a different hole? How come I can't look through the hole that takes the picture. So anyway, that, like I said, that bugged me for years. I'm trying to save every penny I can so as to get stuff developed and like that. And I walk past. My dad was in the, go figure, mobile home business, you know, trailers they call them here. And he would have various people do various jobs. He had this guy, he was doing some painting, and I walked past his truck, and there's a camera on the seat of his truck. But there's only one hole, dude. There was just a lens on the front of it. And so I found, his name was Brad. I still remember it. Like, and I'm like 14 years old at this point. And so I go up to Brad. I'm like, Brad, what's the deal? Where's the hole that you look through? He says, oh, no, dude, this is an SLR. I said, wow, what does that mean? He said, single lens reflex. And I was like, well, what does that mean? He said he takes the lens off. He shows me the mirror and, explains the prism. He says, basically, it means the hole that you look through is the same hole that takes the picture. Dude, I swear to you, like the clouds separated, angels started singing, okay? And I'm like, I have to have this. I have to have one of these. So I tried to borrow the money from my mom and dad. That didn't work. Okay, I got a speech about, walking uphill both ways and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, so I said, okay, fine. I'll make my own money. So I got a paper route. I started throwing newspapers. I saved my money. It took 6 months, and I went to, in the States, J.C. Penney's, okay, which basically they only sell T-shirts now, I think. But I go to J.C. Penney's, and I pointed to a Minolta SRT 201. I have it, too. I still have it right here. This is it. This is the camera, right there. Still got it. This is to remind me who I am, where I come from. And so the lady, and it's got like a little $200 price tag on it, and I had $200 on me. And so I said, that's what I want. She said, okay, $210. I go, no, it says 200. You messed up. She says, son, that's tax. So that's like one of my first life lessons right there, So I had to borrow $10 from my dad to buy this camera, which, by the way, I still owe him to this day. I never paid that back. So anyway, he called that his retirement, Anyway, so now I got this fancy camera, right? An SRT 201. I remember sleeping with this camera. I loved the mechanical, the click. I mean, I loved it. And a friend of mine sees this camera, and he says, "Oh, you got one of them fancy cameras." I'm like, "Yeah, SLR. Take the lens off. Show him the prism, Anyway, he said, "Would you take pictures of my wedding?" Mm-hmm. All right, man. Like, I'm 15 years old at this point. And so I was young, but I wasn't stupid. And I thought about it. I was like, man, I get to make money doing something I love more than anything else. And so, but then I thought about the responsibility, and I thought about, what you had to do and how am I going to know where to go, whatever. And I said, no. Well, he would not leave me alone. I mean, week after week would go by. Every time I'd see him at church, wherever, he'd be like, hey, man, take pictures of would you take pictures of my wedding? Would you take pictures of my wedding? So finally, in my little 15-year-old brain, I thought to myself, how can I say no in such a way that this guy will get it and he will understand no means no? So I thought, I know. I'll say yes. He'll then say how much, and then I'll give him a price that's so high, that's so astronomical, that there's no way he'll accept. So the next time I seen him, he says, hey, man, you take pictures of my wedding? I said, yes. He said, how much? And I said, $100. And he said, okay. So now I'm stuck, man. I'm stuck doing this dude's wedding. And so I did it. My dad literally had to drive me to the church because I didn't have no car or license. You know what I mean? So I remember being at the reception. This is like burned in my brain. I remember being at the reception, eating a meatball, okay, and thinking to myself, I just made $100 doing what I love more than anything else. It took me 6 months to make $200, and in a few hours I made $100.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. And from that moment forward, everything I did was focused on being a professional photographer. You know, things. I joined the library club because it allowed me to read more about photography. Right? You know, I went and applied for a job at a camera store. You know, it just everything I did was all about photography, learning photography, being a photographer. And so that's it. You want to know how it started? That's the story. So there you go.
That is incredible. Oh my God. Like, and okay, so that first job you had doing the wedding, now obviously first professional bit of work you haven't done. What was the initial result like of your first job? Like, how did the photos turn out? And was that like at the first like learning curve in terms of professional photography?
Well, I mean, here's the thing about me. I'm not scared of reading. I'm not scared of learning. So, you know, before I ever started clicking with this camera, I read the whole instruction manual 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
So I thoroughly understood the relationship between ISO, f-stop, shutter speed. I understood all of that. It was not a question for me. I understood how a flash worked. I understood the idea, the concept of flash sync. In the day, now you're making me wonder. Yeah, back in the day, it was a 60th of a second. Okay, that was your maximum flash sync speed. So I understood the concept of what happens if you put it on one shutter speed of 125. You get that black line, and all those types of mistakes, which is what your atypical amateur makes. I wasn't making those kinds of mistakes because even at 15 years old, I thoroughly understood all of that because I took the time to learn it. Okay. And that to this day is one of the biggest mistakes I notice that people make is they don't take the time to learn their craft. Well, at the wedding, you know, I did a good job. I must have done a good job. There was next thing you know, people were asking me left and right, would you take pictures of my wedding? Would you take pictures of my wedding? And it was like $100, $100, $100. I was digging that, man. You know, I was making money now doing what I loved. So, you know, I mean, the results were not terrible. And so that helped, you know, that really helped.
Yeah. That's incredible. Like, and so obviously then as the sort of business progressed, you know, you went into like different types of photography, like, so from, you know, headshots, corporate, wedding still. And I noticed on your website as well, there's a section for food, which again, incredible. And was there an element that you just didn't want to niche yourself into a specific branch of photography and just was like the passion of just taking photos of anything and making it like look really good or telling a story kind of thing?
Well, you got to know a little bit, which I know you don't. You got to know a little bit about the area I am from. Houma, Louisiana is not a big old monster town. It's not New Orleans. Okay. Yeah. It's not even a suburb of New Orleans. It's just a little, what we call in this area, you know, Cajun town. Right. And, anyway, if you do something in Houma, Louisiana, you got to know how to do everything. So it isn't like I could just do weddings, you know, because you just couldn't make a living just doing weddings. So you had to do it all. You had to do weddings, senior portraits. You had to do family portraits, baby portraits, all that kind of stuff. Now, I will say there was a time when I thoroughly established myself as the high school senior portrait guy, you know, and for years and years and years and years, if you wanted the best guy in town, if you wanted like extremely creative, if you wanted something that was incredible, you came to me for your high school senior portraits. And then what happened is then the iPhone came out, and that just completely started to die. And now to this now in present time, I still do. In fact, I got one to do tomorrow. You know,
Mhm.
so I still do it. It's just that you don't do it like you used to do. At one time, I'd do 600 seniors in a year.
Yeah.
Okay, and now maybe 40 or 50 in a year. You see, so it's still done. It's just not done to the extent. So what I noticed though is I'm 63 years old now. You know, so there's a lot of things that, like weddings, it got to the point where I just couldn't handle it. You
Hmm.
know, I mean, a wedding in South Louisiana is an 8-10 hour problem, and I just couldn't handle the carrying the equipment and struggling and standing up for that long. It's just it gets to a point where you just can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So I phased that out and phased something else in. And so more recently, I've noticed that when it comes to portrait photography, people are just not as into it. There are some, but the masses are not into it because of digital. You know, high school seniors are not into it as much as they used to because, again, you know, it used to be what a photographer did was like magic, but
Yeah.
now they take pictures of themselves every day. You know, 3, 4, 5 times a day. It's just not as magical as it used to be. So I shifted gears and I started doing more you know, commercial type stuff like the food that you saw, real estate photography, business headshots, corporate, oil field related type things, aerials, you know. And so all I did was just start making money somewhere else. So
Yeah.
it still happens and it's still photography. It's just I had the luxury of being able to shift gears like that. I
Mhm.
don't know if that answers your question or not, but
Oh,
that's how that happened.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Because something that I've noticed, and this might just be like where I'm from or maybe the rest of the UK, but like when you have photographers, you have like they are very niched into like one little area, and that's like wedding photographers, and corporate photographers as well. Like, we've had in my job, we've had photographers who are specifically, they're part of like the like digital assets sort of part of the team and like that kind of, but they do corporate photography, and it just seems very like there doesn't seem to be a lot of people who would like go into all these different type of photography in one go. And
Hmm.
I think it's, I mean, maybe it is location based, like you said. If if you do one thing, you have to kind of know it all, because when you become established in that sense, you're the guy, you're the photographer, you know?
Yeah, it's the size of the town.
Yeah.
Okay, really and truly. I got photography buddies just now. New Orleans is not that far away from me. It's only 50, 60 miles, depending on what part you're going to. But New Orleans is not that far. So you would think, golly, 60 miles, you know, in LA, that's just across town, you know? But in here, that's a whole nother world. And I got photographer buddies in New Orleans. All they do is weddings. That's it.
Yeah.
They got other ones. All they do is real estate. So they are more, like you said, more niche based to where they only do one thing. But in a smaller town, I have found that you got, when it comes to photographers, they do it all. Same thing with carpenters, for that matter. There are some who only do carpentry, for example. But for the most part, I've noticed you hire a carpenter, he can do the electrical, he can do the carpentry, he can put your roof on if you want. You know, he does it. He can do the whole thing. But that's small town mentality versus big town
Mm.
mentality to me.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Like, cause like, so where I'm from, very small town, but like they still kind of like, it's like, you have like the wedding photographer, then everything
Hmm.
else, everything is all sectioned off into like individuals, and it is quite interesting. And you touched on digital photography as well becoming a thing, and the fact that now people like on their phones have like very high quality, like if you're wise to the settings on your phone, like your phone camera, then you can get some incredibly studio
Hmm.
quality photography on that. And like, would you say that in this day and age now, with that, there's like a little bit of competitiveness against kind of, like a cell phone, mobile phone, or is it very much that, people will always still look for a professional photographer because, well, for those reasons where you are more glued into what it is that goes into photography?
I think it depends on the job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let me pick on real estate photography as an example.
Yeah.
I do a bunch of real estate photography, and there are still within my little town that a ton of real estate agents that do their own photography with their cell phone. But I guarantee you, you lay their work next to my work, and it just don't hold a candle. Okay, I mean, it might be good enough, but if you want to create a specific brand, or if you're looking to present this property in the best light, then you hire a professional photographer. Okay, so I mean, but there always will be people who just say, "Oh well, my cell phone is good enough." I mean, the reality is that existed back in the film days. You know, I know people who were like, "How much you charge?" "Oh man, I'm gonna go spend $200, buy my own camera, take my own pictures." Great. Many a times they would call me up 6 months later and say, "Okay, that didn't work. Now, you know, do you still charge what you?" Yes. And so, I mean, sometimes that's your best advertising, to be honest with you. But other times it's just, yeah, it is what it is, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, and fair. And then, you know, still sticking to the point of digital photography, obviously, you know, with the amount of the amount of time you've been in business, there was obviously that kind of shift into digital photography. And what was that like then for you when you sort of made that adjustment into digital photography
Well,
as well?
I remember definitively when it happened. The first cameras that came out were 50 grand. And I was like, I'll be god dog if I'm going to drop $50,000 on a camera. There's just no way. So, you know, I didn't. I was shooting with a Hasselblad at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I just kept shooting film. I was good at it too, buddy. And then finally Canon came out. I think it was the D30. Or was it Fuji? No, it was a Canon D30. But right before that, Fuji came out with I think they called it the DS1. To be honest with you, it wasn't that great of a camera. I mean, for its time, it was pretty good. But by comparison, today a cell phone would blow its doors off.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so but the DS1, and this just kind of give you some insight into my crazy world, right? My brain just don't work at the same photography level as your average Joe. But Fuji came out with this DS1 that you could maybe make a good 5x7 with. That's about it. You know, little image about the size of your head, maybe, is about what you could do. After that, it fell apart. So Fuji, I was a big Fuji guy at the time, using Fuji film and Fuji paper and all that. And Fuji was like, "Hey, we're gonna send you this camera. Could you do a little class at the national convention about this camera?" Absolutely. And without even looking at the cameras, they said, "Well, do you know what you're gonna name it?" I'm like, "Yeah. How to get a 30x40 inch photo from a DS1." And they were like, "You can't make a 30x40 from a DS1." I'm like, "Yes, you can." And they're like, "No, you can't. We created this. We know what it'll do." I'm like, "Send it to me." And that's the name of the class. Okay. And they said, "All right." So what I did was I got this very, very attractive model. She had a bikini on. And I literally, starting at the head, I started by her head, and I went click, 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 and then I went click, 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 click. Okay, and I did, and she just held the pose, and I shot 50, 60 images, and then I pieced them all together in Photoshop, and then I printed a 30x40, and I had it on display, shot with the DS1. Dude, people lined up. People were like, "How in the world did you get this?" And then I explained it. And they were like, "Oh my God." You know, it just shows you, in other words, this new crazy world that we're about to enter, we got to look at it differently. Well, now fast forward to the Canon DS30. That was the first one that was kind of affordable, which affordable back then was what, I think $4,000 or $5,000, and I bought it. And what I did that year is, if I had a wedding, I would shoot the wedding like normal and shoot 5 or 6 images with the digital camera. If I had a high school senior, I'd shoot them like normal and shoot one digital image.
Mm-hmm.
If I had a baby or a family or whatever it was I was doing, I would shoot it like normal and just take 1, maybe 2 digital images. And then I would prep it and do the magic, do whatever. Because, I mean, Photoshop came natural to me. I don't know. It just, Photoshop works like my brain works. And so I just immediately jumped into that. And it was like normal for me to play in Photoshop. So, and I would present that to the client, and every person after person after person preferred the digital,
Mm-hmm.
because they were so perfect, compared to the film. So the very next year, I just said, that's it. We're going all digital. And I swapped overnight one day, and it's been that way since. I don't have, well, I got a fake film camera, right? But I don't even have a film camera anymore.
Yeah, no, of course. And it is interesting because, like, when you look back to, like, film cameras versus digital cameras, film cameras, you had to just trust that where you were looking and pressing that button, that you did not move a millimeter, because otherwise you're risking the focus there. But obviously with digital, you take the photo, you don't even have to, you can look at the screen. You don't even have to look through the eye hole anymore. Your photo comes up and you can delete it then and there. And like you say, you took like 50, 60 photos of this model to create your 30 by 40. And it got me thinking about my whenever my now wife and I got engaged, like, we ended up having an engagement photo shoot. And I think that the girl who took our photos, I think for the 45 minutes that we were with her, she took 1,400 photos.
That does not shock me.
Yeah. And just because, like, I don't know what the frame rate of her camera was, but she just held down her for about 5 seconds, and it took, God knows how many photos. And but back in the day, like, I mean, and whenever you had the film, did you develop your film yourself, or would you have took that to a store?
I did some developing myself, but mostly it was sent to a lab. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Yeah, but that's the thing, isn't it? Like, I mean, obviously the photographer sees the photos themselves first, but, like, at the end of the day, that with digital, there's more of a guarantee of quality. Whereas, like, I mean, and disposable cameras too. Like, I remember being a kid, going on school trips for maybe a night, anywhere from a night to 3 nights, and it's just like, right, here's 2 disposable cameras. They've got 60 photos each on them. Be wise with how many photos you're taking. And, like, obviously they have, like, the little dial on them. It tells you how many photos. And for the younger audience watching or listening, this is what it was like up to 20 years ago. And it's,
So, I mean, let me put what you just said, that whole thing, into dollars and cents for you. Because remember, I was doing this for a living. I didn't have a side job. Okay. It wasn't like I was doing, hanging sheetrock during the day and doing photography at night. This was it. If I didn't make money in photography, I had absolutely no backup plan. Mm-hmm. Photography had to work. It's all I knew what to do or how to do. Okay. So I had this thing down to the dollar and cent, which was $1.50. When you took pictures with a film camera, every time my finger went click, it cost me $1.50.
Wow.
Click, $1.50. Click, $1.50. Click, $1.50. Okay? So you shoot, let's say, 12 shots for whatever reason. What is that? 12, 30, 40, 50, 60, 50. That's $18. Yeah. $18 fell out the sky. Now, what if the customer blinked in every one of them?
Yeah.
You had to shoot it again. And another $18 fell out the sky. So guess what? I learned how to prevent that kind of stuff. I learned how to, in 1/60th of a second, see if the image was good or not good. I learned lighting, exposure, posing. I learned all those kinds of things because it was too cost effective to shoot. Okay, fast forward to present. Do you know to this day I still shoot exactly the same way?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If a high school senior comes in, because of the way film works, film was 12 or 24 on a Hasselblad. So if a high school senior came in and they had 4 outfits, I'd load a roll of 24, shoot 6 shots in each outfit, and out the door they went. Okay? To this day, a senior comes in, they've got 4 outfits, let's just say. I got a digital camera that'll shoot thousands of images.
Yep.
But I only shoot 24. I to this day do not pull the trigger unless it's perfect, unless everything is right, unless everything is there. I don't rely on the back of the camera. I do look at it. I'm not gonna lie, but I don't rely on that.
Mm-hmm.
I know before I pull the trigger if it's good or not good. And that's why, and this I'll add this since you said the younger crowd. You wanna get better? Take your business card, okay? Tape up the back of your camera with your business card. Tape it up and go, even if it's a play session, like in other words, not a real paying client, a portfolio building session, or whatever you want to call it. Take and go shoot a session without looking at the back of the camera. You're going to find out whether you're good or not, okay? You're going to come to a horrible realization that, hey, man, that's a crutch. So you want to get better? Tape up that little screen on the back of your camera and go shoot a session. So that's my advice to your other listeners out there.
For sure. And, you know, it's got me thinking as well about back in the day, old school photos that I would have had. Like we used to get like there would have been like a sort of portrait we would have got done like every couple of years in school, and don't know why it was only every couple of years, but anyway, it's by the by. But originally, when I was a lot younger, it was they just took your photo and they had like the full setup with like the lights that had like the little lampshade and everything, you know,
Sure.
really kind of the sort of older setup, but it was a sort of thing they couldn't tell you if you blinked. So the only way you would have found out if you blinked in that photo was when you got the form. Whenever like I was in like, you know, whenever I was in like junior school, they give me the order form with like the little preview on it to be like, do you want to order this? And there was definitely maybe this is why it was only every couple of years, because I probably blinked in more than I actually realized.
Yeah.
I was literally
exactly what on that before I forget. Here's another one. I notice a ton of photographers now. Okay, I'm gonna use my little film camera as an example.
Yeah.
They hand hold that camera. All right, they're going to take a picture. They put their eye to it like this, right? And what do you do with the other eye? You close it.
Yep.
You close the other eye. So you're looking through the little camera, and when you pull the trigger, it goes dark.
Yeah.
So did they blink? I don't know. That's not do it. Okay? I learned a long time ago. What you do, you look through the camera, you get it framed up the way you want it to be framed up. The camera's on a tripod. And you take your eye away from the camera, look at the subject. Okay, you ready? Here we go. I'm going to do it on 3. 1, 2, 3, click. And you can look at their eyes, and you can tell if they blink at that moment. And so that is how I prevent that blink thing. So I've done that thing that you're just talking about, volume photography, where you shoot the whole 3rd or 4th grade class, right? I've done that. And so I know what that's like. And so that's how I hated it when you would get back a proof and they blinked. They're not ordering that. That's money wasted. I wasted $1.50, you see? So instead, what I would do is I would watch. I put that camera on a tripod, pull your eye away from the camera, and now watch your client. When you pull the trigger, you can tell if they blink or not.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good strategy. Good strategy.
It's
Like,
just
yeah.
the simplest little trick sometimes works so good.
Yeah, and like honestly, it's I like, again, directed to the younger audience. I don't think you guys know what you really have compared to like what it was 20 plus years ago. Like digital
Absolutely.
as advanced as it is and has gotten. It's still a relatively new invention because
Yeah.
like it didn't immediately replace film. Film was still, and like I think as well, like there's somewhat of like a bit of a, I don't know, on a professional level, to be fair, maybe in more on like a sort of hobby level, but there is like a little bit of a comeback in terms of more people are now buying disposable cameras again. More people are like, there's more people are buying these knockoff Polaroids as well. Um, Not the real ones, because I think I think that like real Polaroids now are basically an antique, and so
Hmm.
they have like the same idea. Like my wife and I got one for our wedding, and it was like just the small, takes the same like little individual films that a Polaroid would, but it's the same. It's the exact
Yeah.
same idea,
Yeah.
and but there's that. Even though they develop instantly, there's still that wait. It's like, is this photo any
Yeah.
good or is it gonna suck? But there's a bit of a comeback, I think, with more traditional photography coming, I think, but
Hmm.
maybe in a more hobbyist kind of way.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see that. That kind of goes hand in hand with the whole people playing vinyl. And I
Mm,
saw on TV the other day, they loving the VHS
yeah.
and stuff like that. I think the same thing with film. And I've seen that pendulum click, click, click like that. In other words, you go this way, trends, people like a specific style, even clothing, you'll notice that. They're wearing their jeans baggy, then they're wearing them tight, click, click. And so the same thing happens with film and photography.
Mm.
I fully expect the day. I haven't seen it yet, but I fully expect a day is coming where people will come in and go, "Hey, you're like an old guy. You know how to do film. Would you do a film session of me?" I'm waiting for that.
Do
Yeah.
I would not be surprised as well. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the thing. I think we're a lot closer to that than you might think, because
Hmm.
but again, I think that comes down to more people who are kind of clued into really what things are like now and also what they were like back then too. So I think
Yeah.
it's gonna be a very niche thing, but I think initially anyway. But then I kind of, yeah, I agree. I agree. So as well as photography, over the last few years, you've gotten yourself into writing as well. You have
Yep.
a number of ebooks out, including Spiker Ranch series of Dustin Inheritance, Boots and Stilettos, and then some thrillers in Double Exposure and Code in the Grain.
Yep.
So, what's your background in writing? Like, how did you sort of get into writing, having been like a career photographer over this time?
Well, I got to tell you, it is 100% the craziest thing. And one day I'm sitting around and I don't even have to finish this. You will finish it for me. Watch. If I say a picture is worth, you say,
1,000 words.
everybody knows the ending of that. Okay. So one day I'm pondering this, because more and more of my jobs, you see my van
Mm-hmm.
behind me. I have a van that literally stays loaded with camera gear. And so more and more of the work that I do is all over there. People rarely come to me anymore. They want me to come to them.
Yeah.
Fine. I'm cool with that trend. So there's a lot of driving involved. So one of those driving moments where I'm driving over there and I'm thinking about photography and a picture's worth 1,000 words. I don't know why, but it hit me. Can I do the reverse?
Mm.
Can I take 1,000 words and then put a picture in someone's mind? And then the more I pondered it, the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I think I could do this. Because then I started realizing that, if I want to take a picture of a high school senior girl and it's raining, I got to worry about all kinds of things. Like, her makeup running? Is there going to be a lightning strike and I'm going to kill this person? What about my gear getting wet? What about the electricity? What about the possibility of a shock, ruining camera gear, blah, 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 blah. Whereas if I wanted to write about taking pictures of somebody in the rain, all I got to do is use, specific words, certain verbs, certain nouns, certain things, and describe this event, and boop, I get this picture in my mind. Okay. Well, the more I played with it and just started fiddling with it, the more I realized the exact same creative feeling that I get when I pull that trigger and it's like, ooh, I nailed it. That's the shot. Boom. I did it. Look at me. I'm great. That feeling you get when you nail it in photography. Well, when you write those 1,000 words and it creates the picture that you was trying to create, it's the exact same feeling. Okay. So I was like, all right, I'm a photographer. I've had the story in my head for 40 years, well, almost 40 years, about a spy whose cover is he's a photographer. And where does that come from? Well, I'll tell you. I was going on some job. I don't even remember the job, but it involved me getting on an airplane. So I'm getting on an airplane and I got all my camera gear with me. And I know for a fact that this was over 40 years ago. And I'm getting on the airplane. And as you know, in photography, there's a special kind of head for a tripod called a pistol grip. And it's called a pistol grip because you use it like a gun. Okay. All right. I've got all this equipment broken down and in a camera bag. I put my camera bag. It goes through security. X-ray hits it. These people lost their mind. Okay. I mean, like security bells started whistling. Two big old giant dudes stood right up next to me. The security guy with the badge, he's like, I gotta check this bag. So I'm like, sure, man. It's no big deal. So he starts pulling gear out. And as he's pulling gear out of the bag, he comes to the pistol grip. And when he pulled it out, he's like this. And I'm like, I literally said, I know you ain't supposed to say this, but I said, oh man, that looks like a gun. And he said, are you kidding me? I mean, are you kidding me? He thought that he had found a gun. All right. Well, I said, no, listen, keep digging. That's a camera. For a camera, it's a tripod and there's gear. And so he kept digging, and finally he realized, oh yeah, this is not a gun. This is camera gear. He put it all back. I get on the airplane. Everybody lived happily ever after. But the thought was now in my head. What if? What if I was a spy and I wanted to sneak a gun on an airplane? That would have been the perfect way to do it. He would have thought he was messing with camera gear, but in reality, he was dismantling my gun. So that I start right. This is 40, like I said, 40 plus years ago. I started writing that story in my mind 40 years ago. And whenever I would run into scenarios or situations, because I mean, I've been around the world photographing. I would come to some secure location where I'm supposed to photograph some bigwig or, high security guy or whatever. And the security guard would stop me. And he would say, oh, excuse me, sir, this is a secure area. And I'd say, yeah, but I'm the photographer. Oh, the photographer, come on in. He wouldn't check my credentials. He didn't look in my camera bag. He just looked, how many bigwig weddings? I mean, bigwig politicians and all kinds of bigwigs that I've photographed. And I'm there at their wedding, this private event, right? I mean, I even know the guy who photographed the Kennedy wedding, Dennis Reggie. I mean, I know the guy. He's from Louisiana. And here he is photographing. Now his was one of those scenarios. Here's a guy photographing the Kennedy wedding. I mean, do you realize if he was a spy, what a great spy that would have been? You know? Okay, so all of those scenarios, I start writing down, you could say, in my mind, places I would go. I was one time I was in Cabo playing golf in Cabo, and there's a fancy schmancy golf course down there, Jack Nicklaus design. And what they do, you play 3 holes, and they bring you to what is called a comfort station. And you eat tacos and you drink margaritas, and then you say, okay, then you play 3 more holes, and they bring you to the same comfort station. And you have tacos and you have margaritas and a shot of tequila, and then you play 3 holes, and they bring you back to the same comfort station. So I thought to myself, whoa, what a fantastic place to have a clandestine meeting. You could sit here in this comfort station for 4 hours having a meeting, and everybody would think you're playing golf, but you never left the comfort station. So that's in the book, so things like that. I started putting all these things together. And here recently, like I just told you, I'm 63 now, and I got a little more time on my hands. So I put together and I wrote, dun, da, 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 double exposure. And so in the course of writing double exposure, a friend of mine who is a photographer, she's a photographer, and she's like, what are you doing? I call her my vacation buddy, because we always go on vacation with him. And she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm writing my spy novel. And she's like, what, you're a writer now? I'm like, yeah, I'm a writer. And so, I'm just going, I'm into it, I'm focused. And she's like, oh yeah, well, I got a challenge for you. I'm like, a challenge? What are you talking about? She said, I want you to write a love story. And I'm like, Lisa, I don't write love stories. Oh yeah. It's got to be loosely based on me and Bob, and I want it to be called Boots and Stilettos, and it's going to be about this rich Italian heiress who falls in love with a Montana rancher, blah, blah, blah. I was like, boo, why don't you write it? You got all the details. No, I want you to write it. And I'm like, yeah, I ain't writing that. She goes, oh, well, I thought you was a writer. Oh, by the way, she says, I want it to be rated G. It's got to be G rated. Now, something about that just turned my crank for some reason. And I was like, a G-rated romance. So as a joke, totally a joke, I wasn't being serious, I wrote a couple of chapters and sent it to her. I wasn't serious about this. Oh, it's so great. Write me one more chapter. So I'm in the middle of writing chapter 3, and I'm like, this is pretty good. And I got curious about my own people. And I just kept going and wrote, dun, da, 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 Boots and Stilettos. Okay, so I write this. So after I wrote this, she thought it was like the coolest thing since sliced bread. And she bought copies and gave it to all her family and all this other stuff. And one day, again, like I said, we go on vacation with these people. And she's telling me all about Bob's grandfather, who's was real private, and he didn't talk much, and he was he was like a con man, huh? I'm like, what? Yeah, and he was in the CIA. I'm like, what? And so that, and then when she laid his name on me, Clem, I'm like, oh, what a cool name. So I got the brilliant idea to write a prequel to how Boots and Stilettos came into existence, and that's how Dust and Inheritance came out, and that is the real Clem and Millie.
Oh, wow.
That's the real guy, okay, that it's kind of loosely based on.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of weird, right? It's not kind of weird, it's extremely weird to have a writer do romance and spy fictions, okay? So I said, you know what I'm going to do? I did that in this book. I left a little Easter egg in this book about Clem. He was in the war, and he had an illegitimate child, and, this kind of stuff. Well, that guy is eventually going to connect to this guy in my crazy writing world, so that all my worlds will all come together. So there you go. That's the whole crazy writing story.
But, that's interesting because, like, that's actually a lot more common than you might think, where people who have now, like, people switching genres, writing different genres, not the most common thing, but when people do, you'd be surprised at like how writers will try and make it intertwine, because you get so used to writing about certain characters and certain scenes that
Hmm.
it's just, you want to keep it in this like little universe. And another thing that I've learned from speaking to writers is that there's this sort of trouble in terms of letting the characters go and letting this sort of universe that they've created, this world that they've created, just, you know, these things, like, even though the story has an end, doesn't necessarily mean everything surrounding it has to have an end. So it's always like a really cool way of like keeping it alive in some way, by just being like, okay, this is a story that's like set, you know, uh, God knows how many 100 years between, but there is these little nuances that connect it, and I think it's fantastic. And I
Yeah.
honestly love the fact that Boots and Stilettos just came from like one particular element of a challenge, not so much to
Isn't that
write the book, but
crazy?
it's just, yeah, it's like, can you make this rated for general for everybody? It's like, well, now that you say
So
that,
yeah,
now that you say that,
yeah.
now I'm invested.
Think about it. You got. There's no curse words. You can't have
Yeah,
any curse words.
yeah,
You can't have no. You can't have sex.
nope,
Okay. You can't even have like, oh, they went into the bedroom and closed the door. You can't even write that.
no,
Okay.
no, no.
So for it to be G-rated. So I mean, a G-rated love story. Oi, it was just such a challenge. Anyway, but it was fun to do. Now, just as info, only because you asked, is just I'm still in the middle of it. So I mean, I can't even totally tell you about it. But you
Mhm.
did ask about Code in the Grain. Well, Code
Yes.
in the Grain is going away. All
Oh,
right.
okay.
It's only weeks, maybe months away from I click literally depublish, and it's going to disappear and go off into the infinite world of the unknown, because it is completely changing. Name, ISBN, everything is changing
Okay.
to zero exposure.
Oh, I see. Okay, yes, because I
It's
was
going
going
to
to ask about
become
zero exposure, but it didn't. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be the prequel or book zero of Double Exposure. And
Right.
what it is, it's basically me. It's me. It's me, the writer, who wakes up inside of his own novel.
Oh, okay.
And when he wakes up inside of his own novel, the bad guy in Double Exposure is named Barry Cox. All right. And Barry Cox is after me, the writer. And his only one of his main um, defense mechanisms or ability to get at me is he starts writing a book, and the name of the book that he's writing is Double Exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And so this zero exposure explains the existence of double exposure. And of course, not to give anything away, but he doesn't win. But to get back at me, he starts writing his own version of double exposure, and he's going to
Okay.
call it counter exposure. And this comes from the concept of, this is probably something you're super familiar with. Back in my day, Star Wars comes out,
Mm-hmm.
and Darth Vader was the worst person on the planet. I mean, he was like the ultimate villain. Luke Skywalker, good guy. Darth Vader, bad guy. All right, fast forward, there's Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back and blah blah. Well, then they make prequels. And when they wrote the prequels, you realize, hey, Darth Vader is a good guy. Don't you love they did that? They turned
Yeah.
a bad guy into a good guy by just telling you the whole story. All right, well that has always intrigued me. So that's what I'm going to write. Counter exposure is going to be double exposure, but from Barry Cox's viewpoint, the bad guy's viewpoint. So everything that Reed Sawyer, the good guy, does is going to be bad. I'm going to totally turn Reed into a bad guy in counter exposure, and I'm going to turn Barry into a good guy. And then the only way you're gonna answer who's good and who's bad is I gotta write another one, which is we're gonna call negative exposure. So where does it go after that? I don't know, but that's as far as my brain has.
Are there any other types of exposure? I guess, but that's phenomenal, man.
Yes.
Like, honestly,
there's just a gazillion kinds of exposure.
Yeah.
Think about it. If you let your brain go down, there's like, positive exposure, negative exposure. And so I could go on and on and on and on, and I might stop. I don't know. But that's as far as I got.
I love that, and I love like that. Just bringing that back into, you've got two books that are two different perspectives of the same story, but like you would have to read it to really kind of truly grasp and understand that. And I have to say, it's particularly insightful, sort of seeing how going from the perspective of being a photographer into a writer. Like I don't think in fact I can tell you you're the first of that kind I've ever spoke to, where you've taken the notion of a picture painting 1,000 words to being like, let's go the other way here. Let's put this onto, and I just, it is, especially when you're taking it from real life sort of events that have happened, and because when you look at it, photography is a story. Photography is storytelling. Like, it's sort of how do you sort of, whether it be photography in an advertising way, it's like, how do we tell the story of what this is and how you get people to buy it? And I suppose like when you look at a portfolio as a photographer, that is you telling your story in terms of what you have to offer. And all you've really done is kind of just flip that the other way. It's like, well, okay, here is the storyboard. How do we put this into words?
That's exactly
honestly,
it.
That is, it's
all my buddies, all my writing buddies who read what I do, every one of them, just without exception, because of course they know me and they know the story. They're like, it's obvious that a photographer wrote this, because my descriptions are always like, it's like Boots and Stilettos is in Montana, and they're like, dude, I feel like I visited Montana when I finished reading your book. I'm like, well, that was the point,
Yeah. So. And I think that's like a really, really unique talent to be able to have, because a lot of people will just write and write and write and write. And it's a learning process for a lot of people, because they've either never written anything before or just haven't had this sort of experiences that have kind of been like a sort of help along the way. But like to just be like, well, this is what I've learned, and you add in a splash of creativity and experience, and it's like, well, yeah, this is what I can do. And it's no, man, it's honestly it's fascinating stuff. But on that note, it has been an absolute pleasure, Kirk, having you on Behind the Camera podcast. Thank you so much for your time, your insights, and everything. Before we wrap up, I would just like to give you the floor to just let the listeners know where they can find you and your work. Like, this will all be in the description, but just be nice to hear from yourself.
Absolutely. Hey, first of all, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. I love talking photography. I love talking writing. So, thank you so much for even having me in the first place. But if you want to come hang out and play with me in the photography world, kvphoto.com. That's my photography website. If you want to come play in my writing world, it's just my name, Kirk, Kirk, Voclain, VOCLAIN.com. I actually have a teaching website also for photographers, and it's PRO4UM.com, because lots and lots of photographers, they dig how I do what I do. And, Kirk, could you teach me? Absolutely. Join my pro forum. I'm in the middle of with a guy right now. He's wanting to learn product photography. So me and him are going back and forth. So, that's how and where you can contact me and talk to me and all that stuff. As far as the books go, they're all over the place. They're on Amazon, they're on Barnes and Noble, they're all over the place. So amazing wherever stuff. You dig buying books.
Brilliant. Well, that's definitely be sure to check out Kirk and his work. Once again, Kirk, thank you so much for your time. Been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, buddy.
And there you have it for episode 97 of Behind the Camera. Massive thank you to Kirk Voclain for being today's guest and for sharing his story. If you'd like to hear more from Kirk, be sure to check out his work using the links in the description. Thank you as always to all patrons, your support is truly appreciated. And of course, if you would like to stay connected with Behind the Camera, check out my link tree in the description for all socials and my book, Behind the Camera, The Journey So Far, which is out now. Thank you for listening, for the support, and for being part of the journey. Until next time, take care, stay creative, and I'll see you soon. But until then, peace.